Good day, everybody. On Thursday, December 3rd, 2020, CloudBees CI version 2.263.1.2 was released. And in today's show, we're going to take a look at some of those updates. Now, if you're new here, welcome. And if you are new here, you don't know who I am. My name is Darren Pope, and I am a developer advocate for CloudBees. Now, what we have is a new version that is based on the LTS of Jenkins 2.263.1. If you look down in the description of this episode, you're going to see a link to a video that I did last week with Mark Waite discussing the release of Jenkins LTS 2.263.1. And that will give you some deeper insights into what is in the core of that version. What we're going to be talking about today is specifically new features and other items around the CloudBees release of 2.263.1.2. Now, in case you're not familiar with how CloudBees does the releases, give me a moment to pull up a share here with you. There we go. Our release notes are available on the docs.cloudbees.com site. And right now I'm on the home screen for CloudBees CI release notes. And what I'm going to do is scroll down here just a little bit and go to the top. And you can see that here is the release 2.263.1.2. And we have a full release notes for both modern, which is our Kubernetes-based product, and also traditional, running on a VM, bare metal, whatever the case may be for you. Now we're going to discuss a few items that are both covered in, or that are covered both in traditional and modern, and I'll also call out a couple of items that were modern only. Now, and also a couple that were traditional only. Now we're going to take a quick look at the release notes for traditional. We're going to start there. And when we're looking at this, we're going to go down to our new features. And I'm actually going to scroll to here. One of the big features that came out in this release is the plugin usage analyzer. This is actually the next release in a plugin that is a CloudBees specific plugin that is called the plugin usage plugin. And, oh, hey Tony. And with this, we are able to see how plugins are used. Now, what does that really mean? Well, we can click over here, and this is part of the thing. I'm also, as I'm taking you through this today, and if you're watching this on replay, thank you for watching the replay. We're going to go through sort of how to use the release notes and understand how you can sort of get more information out of it, even more than I can give you in this short video. But how to determine if a plugin is in use, I already have that open here. It does require that you have at least CloudBees CI or CloudBees Jenkins Platform version 2.249.x.x, so it's a 249 baseline. And then you also have to install, so this plugin is not installed by default. You need to install the CloudBees Plugin Usage Analyzer plugin version 2.0 or later in order to get these features. Now, we're not going to go through and read all the documentation right now, but I do want to take you over and show you what this looks like. And I already have a client master set up here, and I have just a job. I put it in a folder here just so I could keep things in alignment. And if we take a look at Manage Jenkins, I have already installed the plugin. And where that plugin gets installed, at least from a Manage Jenkins perspective, is all the way down at the bottom under Tools and Actions. And here you will see plugin usage. And this is the report that is generated. Now what you'll see are all of the plugins that are installed and then the detected usages of said plugins. So we can see here at the very top that the Amazon Web Services plugin is detected in two places. If I expand this by clicking on the down, I can see that the AWS Credentials plugin is used by this plugin, Web Services SDK, is used by the CloudBees AWS Credentials plugin and also the CloudBees Backup plugin. So this is just a dependency. It's used, but it's not associated with a pipeline, or at least there have been no pipelines run at this point. Now, although this says latest pipeline run, this does, going back to our documentation, and I will go ahead and call this out here real quick. It was at the top. Where am I at? It will show information for us for the names, the detected usages, where it's done, and then when it was most recently used. And again, I'll let you go through all of this documentation at your convenience. But let's go back over here real quick. I want to take us down to a step. Now, in the job that I ran, I had installed the Pipeline Utility Steps plugin. And in fact, let me just show you the job real quick so you can see what this looks like. So if we take a look at Configure, I go down here, I'm using a step from the Pipeline Utilities Steps plugin called Touch. And all it does is it creates a file called cool.txt. And then I list it out. So this step Touch is not included as a basic pipeline step. It is a pipeline utility step. So now if we go back over to our usage, and I'm going to go down to pipeline utilities, or pipeline utility step, because I know that's where that step came from, I can see that it's being used. Whoops. So if you click on it, it will take you over to where the plugin is. So wherever it's, so if it's a open source plugin, it will take you to the GitHub repository. If it's a CloudBees plugin, it will take you to the documentation for that plugin. But if we expand this, you can see I last ran this on 12/10. Today is Friday, December 11th. So this was released last Thursday. And we can see here that this plugin was used in the test pipeline number 2. So that was the last place that it saw it. And I can click over to this job directly from here, and it takes me to that build run. So it's a really, really simple way of doing things. Now, one thing that you will notice is in the documentation, if you read it closely, there is a call out saying not everything is going to have usage. So just because a value is 0 does not mean that that plugin is not being used. In the case, and specifically I'm calling LDAP out because it's in the note. If you're using LDAP to connect to the LDAP plugin to connect to your LDAP for authentication, that number would still show up as 0 because it's not being used in a job. But it also it is not a dependency of any other plugins. So LDAP is a standalone plugin. I mean, it has dependencies that it depends on, but nobody has a dependency on LDAP. So therefore, this number is 0. Right now, I'm not using the LDAP plugin, but if I was, it would still show up as 0. So just because a plugin has a count of 0 does not mean that the count really, or that the plugin is not really being used. If you see 0, that is an indicator that it might not be being used. It is a candidate for potential, I might not need this plugin. And why might not you need a plugin? Well, maybe it was used before and you now no longer need it. Maybe somebody installed a plugin and they thought they were going to use it and they never did. So you have to think about, you want to keep your plugins. Plugins give you a lot of power, but also over time, you may not need them. So if you don't need them, you should get rid of them if they are not being actively used. So that's Plugin Usage Analyzer at a very high level. In future episodes of this What's New In, we'll be revisiting this because there are new features coming into Plugin Usage Analyzer. Okay, the other big new feature for this, and it's not really as big of a deal for traditional, even though you can use it, but it's really, really big for the modern, the Kubernetes-based installations. And now CloudBees CI supports Websockets in order to make connecting masters into the Operations Center much easier. Now, if you're running all of your masters internally inside of Kubernetes, it doesn't really matter. Where this comes into play is if I have a client master sitting on the outside world, maybe on a VM, and I'm connecting into that Operations Center inside of Kubernetes. In today's world, prior to this coming out, you would have had to open up a node port and done a lot more work. Now with WebSockets, it's as simple as selecting a checkbox. And in fact, I'll go ahead and show that to you now. If we take a look back on our Operations Center here, and I timed out, give me just a second. So we can see here that my CM1 is right here. If I take a look at the configuration, and we'll take a look at the documentation in a moment, there is now a checkbox on the configuration for your master or controller, depending on when you're watching this in the future. The names may have changed. And you just say, use WebSocket. And you would check that box and click Save. And usually this is important, especially when the master or controller is being created. If I was to check it right now, I would have to do some cleanup in order for it to make sense and continue to work correctly. You can check on the help. It says use the WebSocket to connect to the Operations Center instead of the TCP port. If you take a look at the documentation that's linked off from the release notes, it walks you through every one of these things. Again, use this if you need to. Preferably, you would stick with TCP, but if TCP is not working or it's too painful because you've got to open a node port in the case of Kubernetes, or you're having to open up firewalls for other reasons, this now gives you an option prior to having to do a lot of that extra heavy lifting. Drop back to WebSockets. If that works, that's great. That might be your long-term solution. Again, we recommend trying to stay with TCP for as long as you can, but for Kubernetes, WebSocket is probably going to be your fastest and easiest way of doing things. So again, all the documentation for this is linked off from the release notes. Now, double checking my notes here, one of the new, or it wasn't a new feature, so it was just those two primary new features in this release. Now there is a feature enhancement. The Beekeeper plugin exceptions, that is a feature that had been in preview, is now GA. So now you can just use it as normal. If you've not worked with Beekeeper plugin exceptions, be sure to go and read the documentation. It will take you through all the different steps that you need to do in order to do that. Finally, there were a lot, actually not finally yet, there were a number of other resolved issues and security fixes, and there was a security advisory that came out along with this release. No big known issues, so nothing really huge in this release. And in fact, if you go back and watch the video that I did with Mark Waite on Jenkins LTS 263.1, it's sort of the same thing that he said. This wasn't a very large release. So therefore, since CloudBees is based on that release, everything is good. There is one thing I want to show you though, and I sort of mentioned it, is that we are based on 2.263.1. And what you can see here if I click over on Client Master, what you'll see at the top is the Jenkins OSS LTS. So as we moved from our last release, which was 249.3. I can't remember the exact numbers anymore, we moved based off of this onto 263. So if you're ever curious about, okay, well, which version of Jenkins is CloudBees based on, it's always easy to figure out. You can always look at the first three, the major, minor, and patch version that's released. So in this case of 2.263.1.2, we're based on 2.263.1. So you can always map it back. So if you're ever trying to figure out some other things that might have come along within Jenkins, it'll be there for you to map back to. Now, with that in mind, I want to take us back over to the release notes for Modern. And with that, again, there were a handful of security fixes. We've talked about that. Here are the two new features. We've already spoken of these with WebSockets and Plugin Usage Analyzer. The feature enhancements are all the same, but when we get down into some resolved issues, there were a number of resolved issues for the modern release. A lot of it has to do with image pull, and also there was one on Kubernetes cloud concurrency limits were ignored. Those are no longer ignored. So there's a lot of cleanup. So if you are running on the modern product, then be sure to go through every one of these resolved issues, especially if you've been having a problem. They may already be solved here. And let's see, finally, I do want to take us through, now it's really the finally, I want to take us to the upgrade notes. Now, there are some things that are specific. Snake YAML is one. This was a dependency that was removed. And if you were, maybe some of your jobs or something else was there that was using Snake YAML under the hood, then this might cause some issues. There are no known reports of it, but something being removed might affect you. The second one also is the role-based access control plugin. Now, this is a really big deal for CloudBees. You want to make sure that when you're going through your upgrade and you're testing your upgrade in a lower environment, that you're checking these upgrade notes and making sure that, okay, does any of this affect me or potentially affect me? And you want to go through and read these and apply them to your environment. Apply, I mean, make sure they're tested in such a way that, okay, I've moved from older version to current version. Is everything still okay? And if so, you've got something to track back against. And then finally, the finally, is we were talking about those two items with Snake YAML and RBAC. I want to take us back over for people that are still running traditional. There is one more upgrade note that I want to call out. And that upgrade note is around if you are using the CloudBees High Availability plugin. This has actually been around since the last 249 release or the mid-tier 249 release. You need to understand what might have happened for you here. So if you're running CloudBees HA and you have not gone through and tested this for yourself, be sure to read these. Also, the Jenkins 2.263 upgrade notes. I'll go ahead and open these up here real quick. This also walks you through the things that have happened in 2.263.1. Again, each one of these things, because CloudBees is based on Jenkins and it uses it at its core, then you need to understand what's also happened in Jenkins. And again, we discussed this one in the video that I did with Mark last week. We went into great detail around this SSHD key exchange and MAC algorithms and how it has changed. So again, each one of these things are nothing huge. This 263 release was not a big release, but you're going to want to check it out and make sure that when you do upgrade that you are ready to go and be ready to upgrade to 263.1 and have confidence that when you do that upgrade in your production environment that everything's going to work as expected. Be sure to take backups before doing any of your upgrades, so in case there is a problem, you have something to restore from. We'll have some other videos coming up on this channel on CloudBees TV. In fact, if you're not subscribed to CloudBees TV right now, go ahead and subscribe. Click on the subscribe button, ring the bell. That will help you in the future know when we're doing these kinds of videos, whether we're doing them live or we just post a video for you. Also, as part of a new section of CloudBees, we have a new Twitter handle called CloudBees Devs. This is our developer advocate channel, and you can follow us there on Twitter. We're just now starting to get some content on there. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Darren Pope, @DarrenPope, so you can follow me there. If you have any questions, you can leave them down in the comments, and that's pretty much it for today. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. If you're watching this on replay, thank you. If you are with me live, thank you for showing up live. And hopefully you have a great weekend, and we will see you in the next video.